talk about the business model that's being propagated here, it feels like there's a lot of connection between the research that social media companies saw and ignored on the self-harm causing to teenagers. And think about the business model of continuous engagement. Can speak to someone at the, like Mustafa, who's like really believes in the good and creating technology for the good. But then in practice, when it goes down to other companies who are totally motivated to drive engagement at all costs and build friction into these relationships and not let people escape these synthetic relationships. Can you talk about, even for adults, a warning that they're, if not intentionally nefarious, the business plans that they, go against what's good for the user?
Big tech is not our friend. The CEOs of these companies will say or do anything to increase the share price by one. It's their job. They're private companies. One of the great things about American society is we have the greatest wealth creator in history, and that's the U.S. corporation. And their job and every incentive, their compensation, whether they're seen as heroic or not, how interesting they are, how sexually attractive they are, how influential they are, with the kind of medical care they get, is all tied to their ability to generate wealth through the stock price. If you're in the lowest 1% of income earning households in America versus the top 1%, you're going to live 12 years less, 12 years longer if you're in the top 1%. Money in the US has literally become law. You're working for a for-profit organization. Your job as a CEO is not to protect the Commonwealth or prevent a tragedy that commons. Your job is to get the stock price up. That's what you're there for. So if we're waiting on the better angels of Mark Zuckerberg to show up, don't hold your breath. Effectively, at a very basic level, what these companies do is for every minute they can get you on a screen for long, I think between an additional $20 and $30 billion in market cap across all these companies. We'll reverse engineer these companies and beta test them or A/B test them millions of times using AI. Say, okay, let's elevate this negative comment because this will keep John coming back because it's going to upset. Let's serve this dude pictures of a certain type of woman and model in a bathing suit on Instagram because we figured out that's what he really likes. That's what his fetish is. Oh, let's show my Ted Cruz and Secretary Hegseth saying something really stupid because we figured out she's a progressive. And when we enrage her by making the far right look like assholes, it keeps her scrolling. They will literally figure out millions of times a second how to keep you on another second, another minute, another hour. When I'm on TikTok, lie on my side like a heroin addict and put on diapers and wake up 2 days later and still be pretty entertained. These companies are literally doing to us what the British did to the Chinese with heroin. It is so seductive. And then you look at a young man, executive function is really weak and his discipline is really weak. And he loves that dope at that. Companies where effective percent of the S&P by market cap is 10 companies. And those 10 companies are just in the business of, quite frankly, unwitting, sequestering you from everything else in life. And if you want to see a mammal go crazy, sequester it. Put an orca in a tank with no other whales. See what happens. The worst thing that can happen to prison inmates is solitary confinement. Most will choose to put themselves in physical harm and stay in the broader community than be confined to solitary confinement. A dog alone without another dog or without humans and see what happens. So big tech is slowly but surely sequestering people for profit relationships.
And now that there's going to be synthetic relationships where I am communicating my deepest, darkest fears, my likes, my interests, and they're coming back in real time, it's totally customized. So it feels like what you just described, X, maybe even 100X, where there's this all-powerful technology that's going to hack right into my brain.
It's even more innocuous or gentle, a term is benign than that. I'm on AI this morning, getting ready for my podcast Pivot, and I'm talking about research on affordability. It basically goes through these things on housing, and it says, and it keeps giving me prompts I can't resist. Scott, would you like me to put this in your voice for one of your podcasts? Scott, would you like me to lay this out in PowerPoint from? Would you like some more data on this specific? Should I write it? I mean, I'm an hour later still asking this goddamn thing more and more questions because those prompts at the end are, they have tested millions of times that second. What additional offer of new information would keep this person from going back to doing whatever they were doing before they logged into OpenAI? Most people spend 14 or 15 minutes on OpenAI. They spend on average between 60 and 80 minutes in character AI. it is very intoxicating to start establishing a relationship with an irreverent friend that gives you straight up advice about your relationships.
My point about these relationships is it's a partner with no needs.
Who, no friction, no risk.
AI never wakes up and says, "Ugh, I did not sleep well and I have a migraine. I can't be available to you today." And that's what actually being in relation with another human is like. It's about balancing my needs, your needs, the collective needs if you have children, right? This is literally and I see this for my female friends who are engaging this way with, I don't even know how to describe it and I've never used it. I'm the person who's never used ChatGPT. But whatever's going on, it never has needs. And it always is all the good things that Mustafa said it should be. It's non-judgmental and all these things. I said, but it has no needs. You're not learning to say, it's my turn to hold. It's my turn to be loving. It's my turn to say, what do you need today?
It'll never say to you, as my girlfriend said to me when I was in my 20s, stop smoking so much pot or I'm going to stop having sex with you. It's never going to do what my boss used to do at Morgan Stanley. After a meeting, he'd pull me out of a conference room, take me to another conference room and go, don't say that. Don't be such a fucking idiot. Don't ever say that again. AI is never going to say that to you because it upsets you.
I'm wondering, if I would have even finished my PhD if AI existed, because what I needed to be told over and over again as a graduate student is, you're wrong. You're wrong. It's not complete. Go back. It's not thorough. All of that crying, which was my response, all of that crying and kind of like tearing at my clothes, right? Of like, how can I do this? That was for me the process. And my greatest mentor said, I will not let you leave this university. It was UCLA. I will not let you leave this university with a shitty dissertation. And that interaction is something that for me, like I cannot imagine having that part of me honed by something that cannot say to me, wrong, that's not good.
Or I'm breaking up with you. AI is never going to say to you, this relationship is over. I'm not getting anything out of this.
This is the book we should write, Scott, you and me, all of the things AI won't tell you.
What AI wants to tell you, what AI is really thinking. I mean, I'm going through this process, this hellacious seventh circle of hell process called college admissions with my oldest son. I was thinking about it yesterday. I'm writing a blog post on purpose. And where you find your purpose is you go all in on something and you decide, I'm so committed to women's rights and I'm going to sacrifice for it. I'm going to go march on Sunday. I'm going to give money with no expectation of return. I'm just going to go all in. I'm going to be you give your life, you give yourself to something. I have found my purpose. I took risks. I leveled up. I found a romantic partner. We decided to have kids. Now I'm sort of just all in on these mostly awful things called kids that, quite frankly, don't give me nearly as much back as I'm. That's it. That's it. I'm giving them so much more love, infinitely more resources. I stay up digesting my stomach on whether they should go early decision here, early out, and they're like, out drinking beers with their friends at the pub. I have gone all in. And that, quite frankly, when you go all in on something and you love something that much, it does give you, in a weird way, purpose. The most loyal Americans, the most patriotic Americans are service members because they've gone all in on the country and they've sacrificed so much. And that's the only place I have ever found real purpose is in, I'm not saying you have to have had kids to be happy.
It's actually not the most direct route to happy, I'll be honest.
Well, happy, there's a lot of studies on happiness. We
Yes.
can come back to that. But what I would argue is I think a lot of people towards the later stages of their life say, what was your purpose? What was your biggest accomplishment? Most will say something to do with propagation or raising loving kids that are there for you and you're there for them. And it just breaks my heart that 60% of 30-year-olds used to have a child in the house, and now it's only 27%. It's because young people don't want kids. I think it's because they're having trouble finding a partner and because they don't have enough money because of economic policies.
I think the economics is huge. I mean, I had kids early. I had a kid early, and it was definitely a consideration for me to have a sex. I was launching a career and trying to figure it out. I was in the entertainment industry in 2009, and the industry was collapsing at that point. It's only gotten way worse. It was absolutely a factor.
a lot of people also make a decision of like, I don't want to have to decide what I'm doing based on someone else. Like, I mean, I have friends who are just like, I've had a friend, literally a successful, intelligent woman say, I want to go to Disneyland whenever I want to. And this is a grown woman who's, living her best life with her husband. I think a lot of people also don't want that experience, but, maybe this is a place also to talk about fathers. You speak very, very, I mean, your last book talked a lot about it and really kind of tugged at my heartstrings, but you really, you go all in on sort of what the experience was like with you and your mom and what it was like to, be part of a divorced family also at a time when that was very, very unusual, right? What is going on in terms of male identity as it relates to a father wound? And what's also different? What's different? I mean, my parents were born during World War II, and like they got married at 18 and 21, and my dad wore, a tie every day of his life when they went on, vacation in Paris in 1965, right? It was a very, very different time. What has shifted, right, in this generation, specifically around fathers?
Well, there's a lot there. So first off, divorce rates have skyrocketed, and 3/4 of divorce filings are from women. Some of that, quite frankly, is an externality of a positive thing, and that is women no longer feel economically indentured to them. So women have ascended economically dramatically. More women are seeking tertiary education globally than men. More single women own homes now in the U.S. than urban areas are now earning more money than men under the age of 30. And by the way, let me be clear, and we talked about this, 50% more women in college than men. We should do nothing to get in the way of that. It's fantastic. It's not a zero-sum game. The thing I don't like about the far right's advocating for men is that they feel that the ascent of women has played a role in men's descent. That couldn't be further from the truth. We wouldn't have won World War II if we hadn't decided that women could build P-51s. If women hadn't come into the workforce in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, we'd be a second-rate economic power to China. So I always feel like I need to say, I am no way blaming problems on women. And it's not women's responsibility to fix them either.
And before you continue, by the same token, many on the far left are like, it should be all women. We don't need men. Also not true and not the way through this.
Far right, to their credit, recognize the problem with men first. The problem is their remedy is to take women and non-whites back to the 50s. The left answer to the problem is not productive either. It's basically, you don't have problems, you are the problem. And your solution, act more like a woman. They don't want to even acknowledge a difference in the genders. If I even said, so let's go back to the father thing. It has now the most single parent homes of any nation in the world. It just passed Sweden. And when we say that, it's usually about 82 to 80%, 88% of the time it's headed by them. What's interesting is that women or girls in single parent homes have similar outcomes, same rates of college attendance, same rates of self-harm, a little bit more promiscuous because they're looking for male attention in the wrong places. But on the big stuff, they tend to be okay in single parent home. Boy loses a male role model through death, divorce, or abandonment. At that moment, he is more likely to be incarcerated than graduate from college.
Wow.
It ends up that while boys are physically stronger, they're emotionally and neurologically much weaker. So one of the first things as a society we have to recognize is that when for whatever reason a boy doesn't have a strong male role model or models in his life, we need to get men involved in his life. And even saying that 5 years ago was triggering. Well, what, women can't raise boys? I was raised by a single immigrant mother who lived and died a secretary, lied of my life. Boys need men. And unfortunately, my generation aren't stepping up. There are 3 times as many women applying to be big sisters of New York as there are men applying to be big brothers. Now, some of that is because there's a taboo. If you said, I want to mentor a 15-year-old girl and you signed up, that's healthy and wholesome. John, look at you like, is there something going on there?
Correct.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't have your own kids. Really a shame because there's a ton of men in their 30s and 40s who maybe don't have kids of their own, who have paternal and fraternal love they would like to give or concern. They're scared to express interest. And it's really a shame. Men of my generation aren't stepping up. And we should, because we have registered so much more advantage than these young men that we really do have an obligation to pay it forward a little bit. 1 in 6 men have no contact with their children 3 years post-divorce.
What? That again?
1 in 6 men have no contact with their children 3 years post-divorce.
Oh,
That's terrifying. That's
Some
absolutely
of it,
terrifying.
a lot of it is male bound of it. Some of it, quite frankly, is the courts are somewhat biased against men post-divorce. A lot of time, just logistically. And also, I see this firsthand because I have friends going through divorce. You got two 15-year-old girls, your daughters, you're in town. Do they really want to hang out with dad who's in town once every other weekend? They got their own thing going. One of the things I say or I talk about in terms of, and I'm jumping around here, I apologize, but I think the best thing you can do for boys, dad, really good to them. So a real test of that is after your divorce, there for them. Are you respect? Also, to recognize a small way to come up in terms of the emotional labor that a lot of women are expected to contribute in the household. Are you making a real emotional commitment to the marriage? If you have sons, the reality is it's going to be very hard on him if things don't work out with you and mom. Not as hard on the daughter, really hard on the son. But there's a variety of dynamics taking place amongst fathers and sons. But I think that, I'm not an expert on parenting advice, but I find presence, what I call garbage time. And that is, I find that the only time I really connect with my sons, it's totally random. I like to be their Uber driver. I find if you're not looking at them in the face, they're more likely to open up.
Mm-hmm.
And quality time was something invented by men who aren't spending a lot of time with their kids because there's no such thing. These moments of connection happen randomly.
Oh, yeah. Well, you have to be available, everyone's favorite word. You have to be available. And, as the woman in at least this conversation with the two of you, that's like the number one thing that I think men, and I'm 50, so, the men of this kind of generation, it's like the late Gen X. That's what I most often hear. He's available. And I think part of it is that many women expect their partner to be their best friend. And that is, I think, actually setting us up for disappointment because that's kind of not what he's wired to do. And I'm very, kind of from a scientific perspective, like, very few other primates, you put two of them in a room and say, let's see what happens for 50 years. It just doesn't happen. In primate societies, females have each other to help raise the kids, do the emotional labor, chit chat, pick some berries, have a cuddle. The men are there for a very specific and important purpose, but they are not meant to be your constant emotional companion. And so I think this is sort of, at least for me, this is the challenge of the women's movement, which was so incredibly important. Like that pill changed everything. It gave me agency. It gave me ability. It gave me a job. It gave me a voice. It gave me autonomy. However, it also, in many cases, brings this expectation that the world is supposed to meet me exactly where I'm at on my terms. And the fact is, I want a man who's available, but also most men are not available the way a girlfriend should be.
You brought up some really interesting points. Men are asked who their best friend is, 2/3 say their spouse. When women are asked, only 1/3 say their spouse. They are much better at maintaining relationships. And actually, there's a cartoon of a woman in her 30s who never found romantic love, and she's sitting in the windowsill thinking about her antidepressants with lots of cats in a big wool sweater, hating life. Let's call her Lisa. Guess what? Lisa's just fine. Maybe she would have liked to have had a mate. Maybe she's still in the game, but she's okay. Now let's talk about Bob. Hasn't been married or cohabitated with a woman by the time he's 30. There's a 1 in 3 chance he's going to be a substance abuse. Man, widows are happier after their husband dies. Widowers are less happy after their wife dies. A woman does live longer in a relationship, 2 to 4 years. A man, 4 to 7 years longer. The greatest zone of self-harm, which is my politically correct way of saying suicide for a man, is the year after he gets divorced. What ends up is that men benefit more from relationships than women. And what I've several times, and I've gotten real pushback for being a boomer and sexist, is I think initially, at least, not in all instances, but in most cases, that men should pay on dates. His fertility window is shorter. The downside of sex is greater for you will asymmetrically benefit to the upside, according to research from a relationship. All mammals have a courting process. So a way you recognize the asymmetry and the value of the relationship, greater risks around sex, is one easy way to be in service, not expectation, but in service and to demonstrate valor is to pay.
Well, yeah, I have to say, and this is something I mentor women from a variety of ages. This is one of a large set of concerns. And while I understand, agree with you, and tend to be socially conservative because I was raised by, people who were born during World War II, I'll be honest, it feels like you're being paid to fuck someone. That's what a lot of women experience. I'm sorry, and that is a lot of the expectation. It could be that I'm talking about the wrong guys. Sorry, Jonathan, I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. But the notion is that old thought that if he pays, he's going to expect me to have sex with him. I think that's very true.
The data on this, but I don't think most young men feel that way. I don't.
Okay.
And what I've told my sons, and there's some data around them. I told my 18-year-old son this, he's like, "Oh, Jesus, Dad, that's just so stupid and so antiquated." I'm like, "Okay, but just trust me on this. Anyone you split the check with will never kiss you." I'm going there. I just don't think. I think so. So we really fill up the comments with some interesting, spicy stuff. You talked about a lot of times in TikTok, and I hear from women on these different dating shows, they want a sensitive man. I don't think that's true. I think that's bullshit. I think two sensitive people leaves two people in the car in the parallel parking spot, still empty, and they're both crying.
You just described us every time we go out.
I think what women want and demand is someone that notices their lives, is how hard they're working, and also brings something to the table. And if your partner is ascending economically, whatever reason you're not ascending economically, then you need to bring it emotionally and logistically and domestically.
Okay, I think this is a semantic argument, because the things that you're describing also include what I would say fall under the umbrella of sensitivity. I mean, if you're talking about, do I want a sensitive man who is as hormonal as me? No, I can date a woman and she'll meet more of my needs, I promise. She just doesn't have a penis. But I don't think we're talking about, I want someone hypersensitive or as sensitive as me on my most hormonal day. But I think, and you talk about this in the book, I think you're selling yourself short, Scott. You talk about the need to lean into your emotions, understand emotional situations.
Noticing is emotional, right? Like, you have to be able to see someone where they're at, not narrate their life and miss the mark. You have to be able to connect with them. And that is emotional versus uncontained emotion, where I'm flying off the handle or I'm crying or I can't contain myself.